Right now, you're wearing a mask and you don't even realize it. I am too. We all are. It's not physical, and it's not something you can simply take off in front of a mirror. It's deeper than that. It's a psychological costume stitched together from expectations, fears, values that aren't really ours, and roles we've been playing for so long we forgot we were performing. Carl Jung called it the persona, the social mask we wear to fit into the world. But here's where it gets disturbing. We don't just wear the mask. Over time we become it. We forget that behind the face we show the world, there is a hidden self, wild, complex, contradictory, and often terrifying. Jung warned that the more we identify with the persona, the more disconnected we become from our true nature. And it's in that disconnection that suffering begins. Because we start living a life that's not really ours. We chase goals we don't truly care about. We hide emotions we desperately need to feel. We become strangers to ourselves. And the worst part, we think this is normal. Imagine this: you're walking through life wearing a mask that everyone else seems to like. It gets you approval. It makes you feel safe. It helps you survive. But slowly, quietly, it starts to suffocate you. You laugh when you don't feel joy. You say yes when your soul is screaming no. You build friendships, careers, even entire identities around a version of you that was never fully real. And you wonder why you feel hollow, why you feel anxious even when things are going well, why you sometimes lie awake at night with a deep, unexplainable ache in your chest. That ache is the real you knocking from the inside, asking to be seen, asking to be let out. But we're afraid. Because the moment we take off the mask, we risk everything. We risk rejection. We risk being misunderstood. We risk having to completely rebuild the life we've constructed. And yet, Jung believed that until we confront that hidden face, we'll never be free. We'll never be whole. We'll never truly know who we are.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This isn't just philosophical. It's extremely practical. How many decisions have you made not because you truly wanted to, but because you thought you should? How often do you censor your thoughts, your instincts, your desires, because they don't align with the version of yourself you've been trained to present? Think about your job, your relationships, your ambitions. How many of them are rooted in fear of being nothing without them? How much of your life is built on the question, what will people think? Instead of, what do I actually want? Jung wasn't saying to throw away your social self entirely. He understood that we need a persona to function in society. But he warned that when the mask becomes fused to the skin, we lose the ability to distinguish performance from truth. And when that happens, the soul begins to starve, slowly, quietly, tragically. We live in a world that rewards masks. The more polished, the more likable, the more on brand you are, the more you're celebrated. But what's the cost of that applause? Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege requires a descent, a confrontation with the parts of yourself you've avoided for years. The anger you stuff down, the sadness you hide behind smiles, the creativity you buried to be practical, the vulnerability you locked away because someone once told you it was weak. These are not flaws to be fixed. They are truths to be embraced. And the process of reclaiming them is not glamorous. It's messy, It's painful, it's often lonely, but it's also the most important work you will ever do. Because until you face the hidden face, you'll keep living someone else's life, wondering why it doesn't feel like home. Let me ask you something terrifyingly honest. If you stripped away everything you do just to be accepted, what would be left? If you stopped playing the good one, the smart one, the successful one, or whatever role you've unconsciously taken on, who would you be? Most of us don't know. And that's the problem. We've spent so long rehearsing the performance, we've forgotten the actor underneath. But Jung believed that buried beneath the persona is not chaos but potential, not danger but depth. And if we're brave enough to start peeling back the layers, we might discover that what we feared about ourselves was never the problem. The problem was always the fear itself. The lie that we must be only what others want us to be. The lie that parts of us are too dark or too strange to be loved. But what if the opposite is true? What if the parts we hide are the very keys to our freedom? This journey isn't about destroying the persona. It's about differentiating from it. Knowing when you're performing and choosing consciously whether it serves you or stifles you. It's about learning to listen to the quiet voice beneath the noise. The voice that whispers things that scare you. The voice that tells the truth, even when it's inconvenient. The voice that knows who you are, even when you don't. That's the voice Jung wanted us to recover. That's the face he wanted us to meet. And until we do, we'll keep projecting our unlived life onto others. We'll envy people who are free. We'll resent those who embody what we've repressed. We'll judge what we secretly desire. Because that's what the hidden face does. It doesn't disappear. It just shows up in ways we don't recognize. In dreams, in arguments, in addictions, in regrets. The mask doesn't protect you from pain. It creates it. The shadow in the mirror, why what you hate in others lives inside you. There is a moment, often sudden and unsettling, when someone triggers us and we don't know why. Maybe it's the arrogance in their voice or the way they walk with too much confidence. Maybe it's their messiness, their emotionality, their coldness, their ambition. Whatever it is, it hits something raw inside us. And what do? We judge, we gossip, we distance ourselves. We say, "That's not me. I could never be like that." But Carl Jung would stop us right there. He'd say, "Slow down. What if the thing you hate in them is a piece of yourself you haven't met yet?" This is the shadow, the part of the psyche we reject, deny and banish into the unconscious. Not because it's inherently evil, but because it doesn't fit the narrative we've created about who we are. And so we disown it. But it doesn't vanish, it waits. It hides in the cracks. And when someone else embodies what we've exiled, our shadow rises not as recognition, but as rage. We don't see ourselves. We see an enemy. And we miss the opportunity to evolve. Think about it. How often do you overreact emotionally to someone else's behavior? That intense anger, that disgust, that instant dismissal, what if that's not about them at all? What if it's your shadow trying to get your attention? Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's not just a nice quote. It's a roadmap. It means that the people who trigger us are mirrors. They reflect back the parts of us we've deemed unacceptable. The ambition we were told was selfish. The sensuality we were taught to be ashamed of. the anger we were never allowed to express, the vulnerability we learned to hide. These pieces didn't die, they just went underground. And now they live in the people we judge most harshly. Not because they're wrong, but because they remind us of who we might be if we stop pretending. This isn't about blaming yourself for your reactions. It's about becoming curious about them. The next time someone gets under your skin, ask, "What exactly is bothering me? Why does this matter so much? What part of me feels threatened by this?" You might find that the answer isn't about them at all. Maybe their confidence exposes your insecurity. Maybe their freedom highlights your self-imposed prison. Maybe their chaos reveals how tightly you control everything. But Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. That means if we don't face our shadow, we'll keep blaming life for the pain we're actually inflicting on ourselves. We'll keep attracting the same types of people, the same conflicts, the same disappointments, not because we're cursed, but because something deep inside us is trying to be seen. But facing the shadow is terrifying. It means admitting that we are not who we think we are. That we are not just the good, the kind, the generous, the rational. We are also jealous. We are petty. We are selfish. We are capable of cruelty and cowardice and desire we don't want to acknowledge. And yet, Jung insisted, this is not bad. It's necessary, because wholeness is not about being perfect, it's about being complete. And you cannot be complete if you're only willing to accept half of yourself. The shadow, once integrated, doesn't destroy you. It strengthens you. It gives you access to power you've been denying, to creativity, to authenticity, to self-respect. The moment you say, yes, that darkness is mine, is the moment you begin to grow. And the paradox is this: only those who face their darkness can truly become light. Let's bring this down to earth. You want confidence? Integrate your arrogance. You want peace? Integrate your anger. You want love? Integrate your shame. The very qualities you think are blocking your growth are often the ones you've buried. And until you reclaim them, not act them out blindly, but own them consciously, you will always feel like something is missing. Because part of you is missing. It's been locked in the basement, waiting for your permission to return. And the key isn't external, it's inner honesty, brutal, compassionate self-inquiry. The willingness to say, I am both light and shadow, and neither makes me unlovable. So ask yourself, who do I judge most? What traits in others make me recoil? What if those traits were also mine? And what if they held the exact medicine I need to become whole? This isn't easy work. It's not glamorous, but it's sacred. Because every time you face your shadow, you reclaim a piece of your soul. Every time you stop projecting and start reflecting, you free yourself from the tyranny of unconsciousness. And that freedom is the beginning of true individuality. Not a persona, not a mask, but a fully integrated human being capable of loving others and yourself without the need for perfection. Meeting the stranger within why you're not who you think you are, and that's good. There comes a moment, usually after a crisis, a heartbreak, a deep failure, or an unexpected awakening when you look in the mirror and realize, I don't know who I am anymore. At first, that realization feels like loss. like a collapse of everything you've built your identity on. Maybe you've spent years being the responsible one, the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel, the healer. You've worn those roles like armor, like a second skin. But now something in you no longer fits. Something has cracked, and through that crack, a stranger begins to emerge. Not someone foreign, but someone forgotten. A part of you that's been buried under years of expectations, conditioning, and survival strategies. And here's the truth Jung wanted us to understand. That stranger is you, not the you that was shaped by the world, but the authentic self that existed before the world told you who to be. The one who dreams without permission, the one who feels without filters, the one who knows things you've forgotten how to know. And meeting that self is not the end of your identity, it's the beginning of your freedom. Jung called this process individuation, not becoming perfect, not becoming someone else, but becoming yourself fully, consciously, unapologetically. Breaking the illusion that you are only your job, your relationships, your trauma, or your beliefs. It's a lifelong unfolding, a return to center through the chaos of life. But here's the paradox: to find your true self, you first have to lose the false one. You have to let go of the self you built to be loved, the self you performed to feel safe, the self you polished to be accepted. And that can feel like ego death, like standing naked in a world that only understands costumes. But in that vulnerability is your greatest power. Because now you're no longer a puppet of roles, you're a creator of meaning. You're not reacting from old wounds, you're responding from inner truth. You're not living someone else's story, you're writing your own. But this journey is not linear. You will resist. You will doubt. You will grieve the self you outgrow. There will be days when you want to return to the mask, because the mask is familiar, and the unfamiliar feels like death. But if you stay with it, if you keep listening to the whisper of the stranger within, you will begin to feel something astonishing: aliveness. Real, raw, unfiltered aliveness. Not the high of achievement or external validation, but the quiet, deep satisfaction of being in harmony with yourself, of no longer betraying your soul just to belong, or of no longer fearing your own depths. And that's when life begins to change, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it does. You stop chasing things that aren't meant for you. You stop forcing yourself into boxes that don't fit. You start saying no without guilt. You start saying yes without fear. You start trusting your own rhythm, your own voice, your own knowing. Here's what most people don't realize: the person you think you are is only a fragment, a surface echo of a much vaster being. And the moment you realize that, you're no longer trapped by your past. You're no longer limited by your personality. You can be fierce and soft. You can be ambitious and humble. You can be logical and intuitive. You can be a walking contradiction and still be coherent. Because the real self isn't simple. It's whole. And wholeness is messy, dynamic, alive. Jung warned against identifying too tightly with any fixed identity, even a spiritual one. He said the goal is not to become something, but to become conscious. And in that consciousness, everything becomes fluid. You're no longer trying to be a good person, you're trying to be a real person. And oddly enough, that's what makes you good in the truest sense, not morally rigid, but deeply honest, deeply human, deeply compassionate. So let me ask you, who would you be if you weren't trying to be anyone? What would you feel if you stopped numbing? What would you say if you stopped editing? What would you create if you stopped asking for permission? That's the stranger within, and they're not waiting for you in some distant future. They're here now in your longings, your dreams, your discomforts, your inner tensions. Every time you feel torn between what you should do and what you know is right for you, that's the stranger knocking. Every time you feel like your life doesn't quite fit, that's the stranger whispering, there's more. And every time you meet them through journaling, through honest conversation, through solitude, through art, through breakdowns, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Not a new piece. An ancient one. A sacred one. One that was never truly lost, only hidden behind the mask you didn't know you were wearing. Wholeness is not what you think. Why embracing your contradictions sets you free. There's a dangerous idea floating around in our culture that to grow, to heal, to become whole, we must eliminate our contradictions. That we must find a harmonious, polished, stable version of ourselves and stick to it, like it's the final level of a video game. But Jung knew this was a trap. He saw wholeness not as uniformity, but as integration. Not peace through perfection, but peace through inclusion. To be whole is not to become one thing, it is to hold many things at once. To be both strong and vulnerable, both light and dark, both rational and irrational, both disciplined and chaotic. The goal, Jung said, is not to resolve the tension between opposites, but to live in it. It is to let it stretch you into something deeper than either side alone could offer. And that's where most people get stuck. They think they have to choose between the parts of themselves. But what if the truth is that you were never meant to choose? What if the parts of yourself that seem to conflict are actually trying to complete you? We're taught to pick a lane. Be this, not that. Be masculine or feminine. Be logical or emotional. Be spiritual or grounded. Be creative or practical. But the psyche doesn't work that way. It's not binary. It's a wild, living ecosystem of opposites. And when we try to suppress one part in favor of another, we create imbalance. We exile vital energies. We become rigid, shallow, performative. Jung called this mistake one-sidedness, and he believed it was one of the great causes of neurosis. Why? Because the part of yourself you suppress will eventually fight its way back. It will come through in your dreams, in your projections, in your relationships. It will sabotage your plans. It will demand to be seen. And the longer you resist it, the more distorted it becomes. The anger you repress becomes passive aggression. The desire you deny becomes addiction. The fear you hide becomes control. And all of it is your soul's way of saying, wholeness is knocking. Let it in. Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. What part of yourself are you afraid to admit exists? Is it your envy, your craving for recognition, your hunger for chaos, for power, for rest? Is it the part of you that wants to scream when you're pretending to smile? The part that wants to cry when everyone thinks you're strong? Whatever it is, that's not your weakness. That's your shadow trying to come home. That's your unconscious trying to become conscious. And if you push it down, you don't become better, you become fragmented. You become a ghost of your full potential. But if you welcome it, not indulge it blindly, but acknowledge it, you begin to heal. you begin to create space inside yourself for paradox. And in that space, something miraculous happens, your humanity deepens, and your relationships become more authentic. Your creativity expands, your intuition sharpens. Because now you're not trying to be a consistent brand, you're being a truthfully complex person. This is why Jung saw the self as a mandala, a symbol of totality that includes everything. Not just the polished parts, but the messy ones. Not just the conscious ego, but the unconscious depths. The self is not the ideal you. It's the complete you. And that means embracing the tension of opposites as sacred. When you feel torn between two desires, don't rush to resolve it. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Let it ripen something in you that couldn't grow without that tension. When you feel ashamed of a part of yourself, don't hide it in the dark. Bring it into the light. Talk to it. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what it's protecting. This isn't self-indulgence. It's self-integration. And it's the only path to genuine freedom. Because when you stop needing to be only one thing, you stop fearing your own depth. You stop fearing contradiction. And in that moment, you stop being a prisoner of your persona and start becoming a citizen of your soul. Think about the people you admire most. Are they perfect, or are they real? Are they polished, or are they alive? Something in us awakens when we meet someone who has embraced their contradictions. We feel drawn to them, safe with them, inspired by them, because they give us permission to be whole too. They remind us that we don't have to pick a side. We don't have to amputate parts of ourselves to feel worthy of love, but we just have to be honest. Courageously, consistently honest. And that honesty about our fears, our desires, our inconsistencies is what makes us trustworthy. It's what makes us human, and it's what makes us free. So let me leave you with this. What if the thing you've been trying to fix in yourself isn't broken? What if it's just misunderstood, misplaced, misused? What if your contradictions are not a flaw to solve, but a mystery to explore? That's what Jung wanted us to realize, that our task is not to become angels, but to become whole human beings. Not to transcend our humanity, but to deepen into it. And in doing so, we discover something astonishing, that the hidden face we feared all along is not a monster. It's not a failure. It's not an enemy. It's you, the real you, the beautifully complex, painfully honest, endlessly evolving self that's been waiting patiently for you to turn around and say, "I see you. You can come home now."